OpenAI is removing the ability for you to easily fine-tune the best GPT models out there. And this is a shame because it used to be very easy to fine-tune even the largest GPT models with just 50 examples to really make it work well for your use case. So what options will you have now? And what does this really mean for the wider AI industry? Well, let's talk about it. Now, to make sure you understand this news, let's get one thing straight. How can you actually optimize an AI model for your use case? Well, there's three main methods. The first one is to use either an open source or frontier model and just kind of use it as is. Provide a simple system prompt and just let your users interact with it. And this can work for basic applications, but if you need something for a specific niche, let's say legal document processing or a customer support system, you usually need to build something on top of a model. And this is often considered to be prompt engineering, where you don't just provide a simple system prompt, but you wrap the model in your own harness or your own code to make it behave in a certain way. For example, you can have the model delegate a customer support conversation to a support agent after 5 back and forths with a bot. The second method here is that you can also fine-tune a model. And this isn't just prompting the model, it is generally changing the parameters of the model to behave in a certain way. I've got videos on my channel where I've fine-tuned a minstrel model on my own YouTube videos to give it a tone of voice that really represents me. And this can get you much further than prompt engineering because if you fine-tune a model, you really change the actual model parameters. And of course, the third option would be to create your own model from scratch, but to be honest, that is not feasible for most people. So the two methods that are realistic are prompt engineering and fine-tuning. And all of these different methods were quite well balanced. Everyone starts out with just a system prompt, starts to build prompt engineering when it's necessary, and fine-tuning is really for advanced use cases. This sounds like a good balance, so why is OpenAI getting rid of fine-tuning? If we check out fine-tune a model, you can see here that OpenAI is winding down the fine-tuning platform. This is very unfortunate because their fine-tuning API allowed you to create a fine-tuned version of their best models, which includes GPT-4, GPT-5, and more. The great part about this is that unlike regular fine-tuning, which I've covered in my channel, you don't actually need to do that much in this platform. If we check out the documentation, you can see that you only need 10 examples and ideally provide 50 to 100 examples. This is much less than if you fine-tune a model yourself. You'll see in other videos on my channel that I had to pull in thousands of pieces of transcripts from my videos to fine-tune a small model. So why did this API work so well? Well, this API worked very well because if you fine-tune an extremely large language model, like is the case for these frontier models, then they're smart enough to adjust their behavior even if you change just a small subset of the model. But also, because this was a managed API, OpenAI is obviously configuring the parameters in a way that make the most sense. When I was fine-tuning my model in my project here, I'm going to be completely honest, I vibe coded a lot of the pipeline because I'm not really a PhD level machine learning engineer. So what I've done works, but there's a lot of scaffolding code, and it's just a lot more complicated than calling a single API endpoint. Why is OpenAI deprecating this? Well, they themselves say that because models are getting better and better and better, they're also much better at responding to your prompts. So they basically say prompt engineering is sufficient for most use cases. And I will say, I tend to agree because fine-tuning is a very difficult process. Now, one of the big pain points of fine-tuning is that when a new model comes around, it takes a long time for your fine-tuning pipeline to work for that new model. You not only have to just run the pipeline again, which could take a couple of hours to many days, but even if you run it, the result might be completely unexpected because the new model might behave very differently to your training data. This is of course the same for prompt engineering, but you can start testing that and adjusting your prompts pretty much immediately. So it's just historically been much easier to migrate a prompt engineering project to a new model compared to a fine-tuning project. So what is really the problem here when OpenAI themselves say, well, most people don't need fine-tuning? Well, the thing is, there are still cases where fine-tuning makes sense. For example, an enterprise with their own legal data format might be able to benefit a lot from fine-tuning a smaller local model because they can fine-tune the model themselves, fully own it, and not have to pay anyone for running the AI model. And if you know how to fully create a fine-tuned model yourself, then you can also own your own AI and really create sovereign AI that is high quality. If nobody develops the skill of fine-tuning, then we all have to rely on these kinds of APIs that get deprecated very quickly. And it doesn't just get deprecated on the OpenAI side. Let's just pull in another example. You've got a lot of fine-tuning capabilities in Microsoft Azure, and even though fine-tuning there is not deprecated, the problem is that once you have a fine-tuned model, it will get retired in approximately 18 months. So even if you fine-tune a model, you don't own it at all, and you have to eventually create a new fine-tuned model on a new different LLM that might perform worse for your task. We've kind of seen this in people getting really upset with GPT-4o being deprecated because I felt that GPT-4o was much more emotional than the newer GPT-5 models. And similarly, maybe your fine-tuned model from 2 years ago still does work better than a state-of-the-art model for some specific use case that a large organization might have. So in the end, what do you do if you still want to fine-tune a model? Well, some of my previous videos are a good start. They explain how you can prepare your data and how you can actually figure out which use cases need fine-tuning in the first place. But then also, there's a lot of great tools that make it easier to fine-tune. For example, one tool that I would definitely recommend is Unsloth, because nowadays they've got Unsloth Studio, which allows you to fine-tune models using a local interface. And if you use something like Unsloth, maybe you won't understand every parameter that it sets, but at least everything you do there is replicable because it's all running locally. So if you take an open source LLM, use Unsloth Studio, then you have created a fine-tuned model that you truly own. And that's how you can work towards sovereign AI that works for your use case. And I help you learn the rare skill of fine-tuning in 3 different ways. First, in the description, you can find my free local AI projects, but also I've included links to my other videos on AI fine-tuning. And lastly, I would start out with Unsloth Studio if you're a complete beginner, because their nice user interface takes care of a lot of the difficult parameters for you.